So, the next question is, what are the main differences between the large company and startup environment for the average worker? So, not for the founder.
For the average worker, um, well, I think it goes back to that original point of like, what is your role? Is it well defined or was it not well defined? I think the average person probably isn't going to be very comfortable with not knowing what they're supposed to be doing. Right. I think the ambiguity about day to day, what's going to happen, where do I need to go, where do I need to focus my time, the context switching and changes in business priorities, I think are much more rapid in particularly an early stage startup, right? In
Yes.
Adam's first days, we were trying to figure out what the right thing to build was, and now here at OfferUp, we kind of know what we need to do, but there is still a level of ambiguity that I would never have experienced at Amazon.
Yeah. Um, so let's see. Interesting learning for the tool here, Dave, is something gets voted up above the current question, they switch.
Yes.
But we were talking about the question here, what are the main differences? So this is technology and development. We'll learn to peg or pin the top question once we start answering it. So that'll be a good learning for us. What are the main differences? In the startup environment for the average worker, one thing I was thinking about is there's no job description. Like, you just come in and maybe you have a title, but like when you want to grow your career at big companies, there's a development process and there's a review process and there's a career guide usually or something that tells you, well, you're a software engineer, and if you want to be a senior software engineer, this is
Right.
kind of what we expect. And at a startup, there's none of that. You make yourself better. You go do the work to figure out what it is. At a small startup, I don't know how long was it, and you had experience with this. So you may have been ahead of the curve, but how long was it before you did performance reviews?
Probably 2.5 years into the company's life cycle. So
And how big was it then?
maybe 50 people.
So for 2 years, the first 50 people, they may have gotten some performance feedback, but like getting the written now, a lot of the viewers may be like, I don't like performance reviews. That sounds great. But if you're actually trying to learn and understand, let alone grow, because at Amazon, I've been part of acquiring some small startups. And one of the things is like, when you have a leveling system, suddenly people have to think about their level. Whereas, like when we acquired Twitch, um, Amazon bought Twitch TV, which you're watching right now. Uh, Many of the people weren't leveled. Like it just wasn't like that. They were all just software engineers. And so we had to map them into levels and then start giving them feedback and reviews. So I think the difference is all of that structural support. When did you hire your first HR person?
When we hit 100.
When you had 100. So for the first 99 people, when I needed to know something about the insurance plan, who answered it?
I did.
Right.
Right.
That goes to doing everything, but also that probably wasn't your area of expertise.
No, in fact, I have just a funny anecdote about that. What one of my employees and friends, he was having a baby the first week we opened up the office,
Sweet.
and I had never set up a payroll system before, never set up insurance plans before. I have no idea how this stuff is working, and
Talk about risk
oh
tolerance.
my lord, ADP was like a nightmare and it's super slow. And so they're at the hospital and their insurance is being rejected because it wasn't like keyed into the system properly. So I have like a panicked husband and an angry wife calling me saying, "We're at the hospital about to deliver. Where's the insurance?" And I'm like, hold on a second. I'm gonna start calling. So I start calling every phone number I have. I'm in a panic, going, "Oh my god, we're gonna take care. Like we have to take care of this." I mean, these are the kinds of weird problems that come up that you just don't like. Nobody ever told me how to make that work, right? And so,
Yeah, so the advantage in a large company, right, is all that support around the environment where there's an expert to go to for everything. Because you probably didn't have a court, even though you were in a legal heavy business. Did you ever have in house counsel?
we brought that person in probably around employee 40, employee 30 or
So
40.
again, all these things that you can just go to. And by the way, Adam Tickets, for a lot of reasons, I would say was a relatively well capitalized startup. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So a lot of startups run for years without any of this.
Correct.
And so I think that's a big difference in the average environment is you just all those corporate structures aren't there.
And by the way, we talked about kind of the lack of corporate structures, but I also think that it's important to call out that for the average person, you have relatively codified safety nets and procedures and policies around if you're doing your job right and if you're being successful, if you're not being successful, what chances do you have to kind of manage that situation? I think one of the tricky things is that in a startup, it's kind of like it's not working. Thanks, you shake hands and you part ways. I don't want to make it seem so cutthroat, but there's not a lot of room to keep dragging on an employee that's just not performing well.
Yeah, at one point, the startup I was a part of did a layoff with no severance at all. Called a bunch of people into the room and said, "Hey, we're dead broke. Sorry, today's your last day." And what are we getting? What's our package? I don't know. Would you like to take a soda with you? Now that was poorly run, and I'm not proud to have been a part of that particular environment. But you got to be tolerant of that risk, which you're going to hear a lot. So this is a really good question. Thank you. And I see others are being voted on. The next one's going to be a doozy. So the great thing about having a guest is I get to let him answer them first. So we'll go ahead and drop down the list here.